Welcome to Unscripted with Jeff Pedowitz. I sit down with remarkable people from very different worlds, security and science, business and medicine, technology and the arts, for honest conversations about AI and where it's taking us. No scripts, no talking points, just what they actually think. I'm Jeff Pedowitz. Let's get into it.
My guest today helped build the thing he now spends his life fighting. Eric Forst spent years in ad tech, helping create the foundational technologies of the modern surveillance economy, the machinery that tracks, profiles, and monetizes all of us. Then he turned around. Today, he builds tools to give people back ownership and consent over their own data, and he's tackling a question that's about to land on all of us. When an AI agent shops, signs, and pays for your behalf, who actually agreed to the terms, and who owns what you gave up? His forthcoming book is called Terms of Service: Reclaiming Human Agency in an Age of Digital Surveillance. So that's where we're going to go. Eric, welcome to Unscripted. Let's get into it.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here.
So to start, since you have been doing this for a while and you've done it from both sides, what's a belief in the field that you've changed your mind about recently?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think probably the main thing that my thought process has been shifting on lately is how soon do we get to AGI? How soon do we get to this point where humans don't have anything to do productively? And I used to think it was coming much more quickly, but since I've been building AI agents intensely over the last 9 months, my mindset on that has shifted. I think that while models are getting massively better and impressive at what they can do in terms of the frontiers of math and science, and just using Fathom for the last week, it's been incredible. It's just amazing what it can do with a one-shot prompt, building a deck, perfect after one shot, first draft. But building agents is a different beast. There are so many steps in the process, and every step has to be at like 99% accuracy. So with an agent, there might be 200 steps in the process, or even just 20. And if one step only has a 50% accuracy rate, the whole process fails. And so building agents is much more labor intensive and time consuming than I think most people realize. I don't think there is an agent that can build an agent that can really do commercial work, operational work at the level of quality and error rate that people need. So I think that's where a lot of my mindset has shifted, being in the tools, vibe coding, building agents every day.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, though, it's impressive capability of things we're able to do today versus 3 months ago versus 6 months ago. But yeah, I'm there with you. I think there's still quite a ways to go. And we even see tech leaders now taking a step back in their forecasts about how much AI was going to replace the workforce. And I think there's this realization like, no, you really still need people, especially.
Yeah.
This is not that smart yet.
Yeah, especially people with expertise who really understand the domain. So, I'm constantly iterating with my client and having them look at the outputs, using their domain expertise to adjust things, and then go back, iterate, bring them a new agent. So human expertise is still highly in demand and will be for the foreseeable future.
So in your book, you talk about foundational technology of surveillance economy. So what have you actually built, and when did you realize what that was?
Yeah, so in 1999 and 2000, I was building SaaS software, and we didn't even call it SaaS back then. You probably remember it was just like web-based software, and that was just building one of the first ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, for a national staffing company where I was running marketing. And then in 2005, I was running marketing for an ad tech company that had one of the largest third-party cookie pools with 125 million unique users. It was called Traffic Marketplace. And we developed pixel targeting, pixel tracking. And so that's a foundational technology that at the time was really cutting edge in terms of being able to track a user's behavior in-site, in-page. So if someone abandoned a shopping cart, you could retarget them. And at the time, my job was to market that technology. So I was at the front line of getting user feedback on it and then delivering that back to the product teams. we had a suite of targeting technologies like geo-targeting, contextual targeting, and we called this behavioral targeting, but that really freaked people out. It freaked me out. And so we changed the name to personalization, which is where we're at today. Another one that I was involved with at the front lines was in 2007, from 2007 to 2012, I ran business development for a company called Visible Technologies. It was a WPP company. It was one of the very first companies doing social media sentiment analysis using analytical AI at the time, Bayesian inference, natural language processing, machine learning, to help brands understand what people were saying. And that is now a foundational technology as well. So those are the two that I had the main frontline experience with.
So, but what was the turn, right? Like, what made you go from building it to saying, hey, I want to dismantle this thing?
Yeah. So, it really started even before I worked for Traffic Marketplace. There was, this compulsion to adopt new technology. So in my first marketing job from 95 to 99, that's when everyone was adopting cell phones. And I was really resistant to get one because to me it was a tracking device, right? It was like that was sort of my frame of reference for how I saw the world. My background was at that time as a creative. I'd gotten an MFA in creative writing and poetry. I was playing in indie rock bands at CBGBs and moved to LA and started a new band. And in that world, we really resisted the mainstream music machine. Our whole point of existence was as an alternative. They called it alternative music, which we didn't like because that became a marketing label, but it really was an alternative to the mainstream. It was DIY, do it yourself, build your own labels, your own fanzines, record on a 4-track machine, control the means of production and distribution. And in the mindset of that world, we didn't even want to use debit cards or cash machines because that was like the man has you, they're tracking you. And so it's sort of this cash ethos, right? And so when my boss in 99 said, you need to get a cell phone so I can reach you on weekends. And I'd been carrying a pager for a few years, which felt more benign. That was where I first realized, okay, I have to kind of submit to this surveillance technology in order to participate in the economy. And then in 2005, working in ad tech, I was walking into a board meeting and heard one of the investors ask our chief product officer, this is a company that was running a lot of these win a free iPod offers where, to enter the sweepstakes, you gave all your personal information. And so the investor in the company turned to our chief product officer, just kind of as people were walking in, wasn't like, for the whole meeting. And he said, hey, so you got any more of those scams we can run that take advantage of stupid people? Just like that, just so matter of factly. And I was really idealistic. I tend to be an idealistic and optimistic person, thinking, okay, this is great technology to help marketers find their tribe, find their ideal customer, and reach them more efficiently. But he just saw it as a way to extract personal data, and people didn't really know what they were turning over. I mean, I still think we massively undervalue.
I don't think they don't. I mean, and it's probably way worse now with all the apps on our phones, and we're trading privacy for convenience every single day.
100%. So that was really the watershed moment for me, where I left that company a few months later. I after hearing that comment, I literally started an aggressive job search and decided I was going to leave. And from that point on, my mindset has always been, okay, I've already built my career here in marketing and in marketing technology. How can I figure out how to use this stuff for good to help people rather than exploit them? So that's what set me down that path.
So your Consentee Protocol, it enforces terms before a transaction. Mm-hmm. So can you walk me through what that actually does?
Yeah, absolutely. So, many people have heard about or have started using something called X402 protocol, which was released by Coinbase last year. We have a lot of clarity now around using stablecoins, USDC and USDT, because of something called the Genius Act that was passed last year by Congress. And so X402 protocol is primarily designed for stablecoin payments between AI agents. And that protocol was released in September, October of last year. It's now been transferred to Linux, so it's a completely open source protocol. And over 53 million transactions have gone through that protocol, with $40 million in volume settled, which is an average transaction of just under 30 cents per transaction. These are microtransactions, mostly for data and API calls. And when I started looking at that data and looking at how people were using it, I realized there were no terms in place. There was no statement of work. There was no limitation of liability, data usage policy, all of the things that we've been doing in SaaS software for 25 years or 30 years, or software sales probably forever. So there's an agreement in place. First, that mostly protects the seller. And it also protects the buyer as well. And so these agents were making all these transactions without any of those terms in place. So Consentee Protocol is an open source protocol. We've published it with an MIT license and a GitHub repository where anyone can use it. And it just forces the agent, the seller agent, a buyer agent can run it as well, but it's mostly for a seller agent, can't accept payment unless the terms are in place first. So it's a guardrail designed really for chief legal officers, compliance officers, CISOs that are worried, or in some cases freaking out because their salespeople or marketing people are deploying commercial agents with wallets to buy and sell stuff, and they're not necessarily putting these agreements in place. And there was a law passed by 49 of 50 states in 1999 to 2000 called UETA, the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act. Also around that same time, e-sign came into place. And these were laws that really empowered DocuSign to do electronic signatures. But the people who wrote that law, in fact, I've become friends with here in San Francisco, a guy named Daza Greenwood, who's a lawyer, who's a legal tech guy. And he was the main author of the law, and he, is a science fiction fan. And so he foresaw AI agents, he called them electronic agents, doing signatures. So the law already says if your agent makes an agreement with another agent, you're legally beholden to it. Or if it just does some type of transaction, you're legally liable for it. So the liability is already there in the law, but very few people deploying agents, especially under X402, are putting the legal terms in place. So Consentee enforces the terms before transactions.
I mean, when we think about the terms of service, right? I don't know, maybe 1 in 100 reads them. Just you see, scroll, like, where's that signature? Let me just get to the end. So how would an AI agent actually reading that and then negotiating them for us be better, and then not just a faster surrender of terms that we don't understand that we're committing to?
Yeah, no, so that's a really good question. And so there's a real distinction here between what a human does and what an agent does, and their behaviors are very different. So, with humans, we're trying to persuade each other. We're buying and selling, and we're pitching. With an agent, you can't really pitch an agent. So the agent is making the transaction in a more just sort of purely rational way. So I'm sorry, repeat the question again, because I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, no, it's okay. Well, a lot of what you're suggesting is have AI agents help with this, right, to protect the customer. But
right.
As it relates to terms of use, though, right? So if an agent can then read the terms of use, how does the customer trust that the agent is going to do something on their behalf versus it's just something to process the paperwork? Got it.
I remember exactly where I was going with this. So as a human, we hit Facebook, we hit X, we hit almost most SaaS software. We're determined that we're going to use it, and we don't even read it. So we just accept the terms for the most part. An agent can read the terms very easily, and you can have the agent set up with a library of all of your standard legal templates, right? And so if there's anything in the buyer or seller's agreement that is different from your baseline, that your chief legal officer, that your law firm has set up for you, can very easily see that discrepancy, right? So it's much easier for them to read the terms in seconds and see if there's an offending term in there. So that can send an alert to the legal officer saying, hey, this agent is trying to procure some widgets for my factory, is sending me alert because the seller's terms are egregious. So now I'm aware of this, and I can control it. I can oversee what it's doing. So that's one way they're different, and where it's important to have this stuff in place. Now, Consentee isn't set up to allow for a negotiation. It's just saying, are there terms in place, and do you accept them? If you accept them, great. Let's record these terms. Let's have cryptographic signatures by the agents, and we record the signatures on chain, on a blockchain. So there's a third-party verification. So you get there's no dispute of like, oh, did you read it? Did you sign it? The agent signed it, and the signatures it signed it on your behalf, and then we also have it hooked into Blocksy, which is our let's call it DocuSign for Agents platform. So it will send an email to the person to sign, and that signature will be cryptographically recorded. You could put it on auto mode also without Blocksy, but I wouldn't recommend that. So you still want that human in the loop that's actually applying the signatures. And so that's the difference. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, blockchain's been around for a while. It's being used in crypto. It's being used in supply chain, but there are still a lot of skeptics out there that doubt that blockchain can actually do what it actually says it can do. So, as it relates to data ownership, is it blockchain that's doing the real work here, or is this like a buzzword, an idea?
No. Blockchain is doing the real work here. So I'm a firm believer in blockchain as a decentralized public ledger. That has tremendous utility. Now you can argue that the price of crypto tokens relative to the use value of a blockchain is divorced from that, right? All of the speculative hype that pushed the prices to maybe crazy levels. That's crypto. I'm talking about blockchain as a decentralized public ledger. It definitely has utility, which is you have hundreds or thousands of independent operators maintaining nodes to maintain the network, all proving each other's work. So this allows for what we call a trustless environment. It allows you to have a third-party verifier and not have to rely on one of the parties' claims. So that's the main way that we use blockchain to verify reality and not have to have a disagreement about it. So I'm still very bullish on that use case for it, and we use it in all of our companies and all of our projects in that way.
I mean, this concept of owning your own data, universal data card, personal data card, it's been promised for a good decade now, but never quite seems to arrive. What makes this time different?
Well, there are a couple of things. So it's still going to take a while, but I do firmly believe that the wallet is the new cookie, or should be the new cookie, and Google is actually starting to sunset them. They haven't completely. They've been saying for years they're going to sunset cookies, but that's one of the main things preventing this is the third-party cookie that's still widely adopted, widely used. But as that is sunsetted, in an ideal world, what I talk about in my book is that at birth you should have a digital wallet that lives on a blockchain, so it's third-party, verifiable, trustless environment, and your social security number, your birth certificate are digitally in that wallet. And from that point forward, everything that you do online is connected to a wallet that you control. And so the technology is there. It's been there, like you said, for 10 years. And a lot of it does require a blockchain to settle the transaction. So you don't have to have a third party, big tech oligarch controlling your data ever. You can run the wallet on a blockchain on a decentralized cloud compute. So you have to really start at the base layer. And we now have these base layers. Akash was one of the first decentralized compute networks. There's one now called Manifest that I use that is just individual people or people who have data centers or server farms being able to put their clusters, put their compute online and deliver AWS level services and quality of service in a decentralized way. So you don't have to worry about a government or a company shutting you down. So you have to start at that base layer if we're talking about true data ownership.
I mean, it's noble, and I've long championed myself for the concept, but at the same time, I mean, you've got the Amazons, the Visas, the OpenAIs of the world that they're already managing billions and billions of dollars of commerce. So how do we set up an environment? I mean, do we need regulation or governance for this? Right? Because how does a startup protocol change that when there's so much economic interest, right, from the big guys to control the outcome?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's also one of the main themes of my book. So the first half of my book, I talk about my personal experiences, having visited the Soviet Union and built this marketing technology that has created this surveillance state. And then I also talk about a lot of the constitutional violations that are taking place today, especially the Fourth Amendment, with regard to surveillance and privacy protections. And then the second half of the book is two parts. The first part is, here are the decentralized technologies that are available now that allow you to start reclaiming your human agency, start owning your data. And then the last part is, here are the policies that we need. And it won't happen with one or the other. We need both. We need the awareness and the use of the decentralized technologies, and we need policy. And so I present it as a 28th Amendment for digital rights for AI or for digital rights in an age of AI. A bill, I call it a Bill of Rights for an age of AI. And so that's aspirational. I don't have illusions that a constitutional amendment is likely to get passed, but I think it states the core principles that are needed. And there are other steps along the way that we can take short of a constitutional amendment, like there's something called the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act. It passed Congress almost 2 years ago. It's stuck in the Senate, passed the House, stuck in the Senate. So that is a great privacy protection rule that closes the third-party data broker loophole. So in, I believe it was 1979, there was a case, Smith versus Maryland, where they said, okay, if you gave if you made a phone call through AT&T, a police or an FBI can subpoena that data, and it's just the metadata. It wasn't recording of all the calls. They said you've given up your assumption of right to privacy because you're using a third-party system, and so that loophole allows the FBI, it allows police departments to just buy all the data they want through data brokers. So the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act closes that loophole, and the Supreme Court just made a good decision last week in their flurry of decisions that came out. One of them closes the geofence loophole. So companies were able to just say, "Hey, Google, I want everyone that was in this 1 mile radius during this time frame." Just from geolocation data that Google has or that cell companies have, they can figure that out and then hone in on their suspects. So it was a really good ruling from the Supreme Court that said, no, you can't do that. That's warrantless surveillance. Essentially, that's a general warrant.
Why has it got stuck in the Senate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't read the details of those debates as to why it hasn't passing. My guess is it's got to be the influence of the big tech lobby. I don't see any other reason why. There's a lot of money to be made in selling that data to the government. So that's my guess.
There was I don't know if you saw, a couple weeks ago, HubSpot made a really big blunder. They came out and said, "Hey, effective in July, we're going to start sharing your data with all the other customers' data so that, we can enrich everything." And, for 20, 25 years, HubSpot's always sold customers on the promise of protecting your data is your data, you own it. So there's this massive uproar from the client base, and HubSpot did an about face in about a week and did its mea culpas. Because, they're doing great as a company along with a lot of the tech companies, but they're getting killed on stock price because investors don't think that they're monetizing AI enough, or that the SaaS business model is going to get disrupted. So that's why I mentioned a few minutes ago about the Googles and Amazons of the world, because you have what the right thing to do is, and then you have capitalism and economic self-preservation, and they don't often go together, because you've got these competing interests.
That's for sure. Yeah, I'm sure that HubSpot sees that writing on the wall. I mean, we're already deploying agents that have their own CRM. They don't need. We can do it both ways. We have some of our agents plug into an existing CRM. They just pass the data in, and it can run the drip campaign there. That's great. But they can build their own CRM. It's just basically a spreadsheet, right? That does stuff. And so, they are in big trouble as a company. And so it doesn't surprise me they wanted to find new paths to monetization. I'm glad people push
So we've talked a lot about trading consent, or not trading consent, but providing consent and trading privacy for convenience. AI is certainly making a lot of this more accessible, but what do you think most people are getting wrong in this age about consent and ownership?
That they need it. Like it's just like what I explained before, just that they're doing all these microtransactions on X402. I think that because maybe they think, oh, this is just a small transaction. Who cares if there's an agreement in place? But maybe the agent repeats that transaction 1,000 times, or even that one tiny piece of data makes a decision that impacts somebody's life, or that data gets used in a way that the selling company didn't anticipate and wouldn't want them to be using it. I think people are getting it wrong to assume that that just because it's a microtransaction, it doesn't mean that it's legally important.
So, as someone that's lived through building surveillance tech, and I think you even visited the Soviet Union before, what does history tell you about where AI surveillance is heading?
So what it tells us is that if you build the technology for what you think is a benign purpose, marketing, it will always inevitably get used by people in power for an authoritarian purpose. And so, the Soviets and the Nazis, they used radio, they used telephone, they used microphones, but mostly they just had to have a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of people, neighbors telling on neighbors, secret police everywhere to maintain control in an unpopular regime that is corrupt at its core. So what history tells us is that the authoritarians will always adopt the latest cutting edge technology and use it. When I sold social media sentiment analysis, I was very proud of the fact that the Obama campaign was one of our customers for the Romney campaign in 2012. And, we were doing precinct level sentiment analysis so that they could micro-target, get out the vote content that would resonate with voters in that district, which is exactly what Cambridge Analytica did for Trump and Brexit 4 years later. So, you think you're just building it to do good stuff, but the authoritarians will always find a way to adapt it to their ends.
Well, if we can deal with the authoritarians and we get the consent layer right, what would a healthier version of the AI economy actually look like? Yeah,
so it would look like users, first of all, owning and controlling their data with digital wallets and laws or a constitutional amendment that enforced the use of that. It would, I think we're going to have to completely rethink economic value exchange, that capitalism is going to break down, that it won't survive this moment, because capitalism is basically, an interplay between capital and labor, right? But if the labor is now mostly being done by a machine, not a human, that totally changes the economic model. Capitalism can't survive that. It will have to be some new economic system that rewards humans, that values our humanity in a different way than the relationship between capital and labor. We don't know what that is yet. It will be something.
We better not share this with Wall Street.
But just look. Just the proclaimed intent of this AI is that it can do all human labor. So obviously, and Sam Altman has said, we trained this on all of humanity's information to do this thing that puts you out of work. They're upfront about that. And they've all said, we're probably going to need UBI. But nobody wants that. We do derive so much of our self, our ego, and our meaning, our self-meaning from our work. So we have to reinvent that. Like, what does that look like? And so one of the things I suggest in my book is, we should all get paid for all of the data we put into these systems that train them. It isn't that hard to do. There's a protocol called Story Protocol that will automatically pay any IP holder or digital creator if their work is trained on by a large language model it will figure out the weights and the outputs for every generative output, and then distribute royalty payments automatically through a smart contract on a blockchain to the creators. So I think we could extend that model to all people. All of us have had all of our comments, all of our photos, all of our work trained on. Now, the problem is, if you, in the current economy, if you add up the value of all of that data, it's like maybe it's less than 5% of GDP. So it can't, replace all of the work we do with royalty payments. But if we say, those are worth a lot more now in this post-capitalist economy or whatever it is, it would be a way to kind of reward people for interacting with the AI, for making their digital data available and getting paid for it in return, as opposed to just having it extracted by default from the terms of service. That if we have to just rethink the value of everything we do and the stuff that is human to human, and find a way to reward it. And maybe it's not always with money; it's with more AI tokens, or it's with stuff. But it can't be UBI, and it also can't be the traditional labor capital relationship. Those are all going to have to change.
Is there something that you're paying attention to right now that most people aren't?
Well, certainly the microtransactions of agents is one thing, but also what Palantir is up to. Just one of my best friends was visiting from Minnesota last week, and he teaches English in Minneapolis. He and his wife hadn't heard of Palantir. Are people really even paying attention to Palantir? Do they know what that is? Do they know how much of our information has been hoovered up through what Doge released to them, to the fact that they've gotten $10 billion in federal contracts over the last year, that the Trumps invested in that company while handing out those contracts, and they've been connecting all of the federal databases together now. I mean, they've been there for 20 years. They started, Peter Thiel and started talking to John Poindexter around 2005, 2006. And when the Patriot Act came out after 9/11, they wanted to do this thing called total information awareness, and people correctly pushed back on it, like they pushed back on behavioral targeting, but they built it anyway with Palantir. So those are the things that people should be paying attention to. And hopefully if they do, they'll be much more interested in using alternatives. All the technology is there to reclaim human agency. You can start doing it today. Just start by changing your Google settings, and using personal models, Quen, GLM, Kimi. These open source models, you can run them locally on your machines and train it with your data, and no one else gets access to it. So all that is available today. Use Signal for all your messaging. So just start with those steps, and we can have a much better future.
Well said. You've given us a lot to think about, Eric. Thank you for being on Unscripted.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
You got it.